Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of VCN at Lunchtime, where I'm joined with David Owen of Titanium Geek. Afternoon, David. Thanks for joining me. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Except for we've said, the challenges of noise mics. I've got neighbours having the trees done, but I think the guy thinks he's driving a Kawasaki Z whatever, and that he's revving his chainsaw. So if you see me going flying through the window, I'm diving on somebody with a chainsaw.
Some American Psycho. That's what we're not trying to get today. So maybe doing a product test on it. Have you been up to any interesting products recently, David? And are you keen on that?
That'd be a good one. That'd be great, wouldn't it? There's chainsaw testing. I've moved around, so I'm testing this at the moment, which is an unusual one, which is not like us, which is a company called Juice Plus. But here's the best bit of this shows on the camera is what's inside it. I won't bore you, but it's got a skipping rope. So it's Juice Plus, but it's got a skipping rope. But quite clever. So what you think about it is you produce fruit, and you want to ship that fruit. Of course, it's going to go out of date quite quickly. So it's easy to turn it into a powder, really extend the sell-by date, and then to put an angle on it. So what they do is they mix it with protein powder. So what you do, you can make a protein shake, which somehow it's very low in sugar. But it's also got your vitamin B12s and C's and all that sort of stuff in. So, people with busy lifestyles, athletes, the idea is it helps them with the performance. But the best bit is I give it to my 18-year-old son, who is really sort of picky, as you can imagine, McDonald's shakes and all that, Mike. And he goes, it's just like next quick strawberry. It's absolutely gorgeous. So he's giving it the thumbs up. So we got that. Still got the Jet Black Volt on test, which is the really interesting one because they've got that app that you connect your turbo trainer and your heart rate monitor to, and then it just sends one packet to RGT or Zwift or whatever.
That sounds
it's a
good.
nice little trainer. Yeah, for all intents and purposes, it's the kicker core with a cassette and a few more bells and whistles, really.
Yeah, that's quite interesting thinking about what we're going to be discussing today around verification and eSports. So having a sort of all-in-one package where everything's being sent from one device could be another good way to check with that verification as well, couldn't it?
Oh God, yeah. Actually, yeah, never thought about it that way, but that would be a good way of doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, so we are going to discuss a little bit today around esports governance. This is partly being driven because there's been a recent flurry of announcements of national and world championships. So we've got the official UCI eWorlds coming up on Swift on the 20th of February, I think it is, or the 26th, the end of February. Let's put it there. And we've got the official Canadian championships coming up on RGT, and at VCN we are hosting our unofficial ones. We thought we were being quite smart with this, and then since we announced it, we've had the Americans, the Danes, the Belgians, they're all jumping on board with official championships. So it's great to see. It seems like there's a bit of a wave of momentum that's sort of sweeping across esports and national governing bodies getting involved. Good to see.
Yeah, it's great to see. I mean, I think we talked a bit about it last time. I was thinking about, poor old Egan Bernal in real outdoor cycling and his blinking gruesome accident. When you're putting the hours in those boys do to earn what they do, and we know they're at the very top, and the people in the second line teams or whatever have not earning so much money. I think esports is becoming even more compelling now. Don't have to have the risks of the road. You can train indoors. You only need a pair of shorts, a pair of shoes, and if you're good enough, you can enter national championships. What's there not to like, really?
Well, yeah, every story or every other story I read on Cycling Weekly or online at the moment seems to be one of these pros having an accident. I think there was the Irish female national champion had a head-on collision with a car who was overtaking a cyclist coming the other way, and she's saying how she feels lucky to be alive. A couple of years ago was actually rammed off the road by a driver, and I just think, I can have a lot of fun racing inside. Why would I risk going outside? I know it's nice weather and it is a different thing, but yeah, all this training outside, it certainly seems to be a lot of accidents happening. So, like I say, it's a lot safer inside. So, some other interesting points is talking about official riders who will only race indoors. So we're seeing sort of this crop of riders, people like Lionel Vuassin and Julia Shalau, who we'll come on to in a moment, who they claim that they're just indoor riders, and that's really interesting. But it does, for me personally, I always think because of the way the electronics work, I'm always a little bit anxious. I'm always like, are my numbers real? And the only way I can really test that is to go outside on a bike where I can't fake my weight, I can't fake my powers, and I can race against some Strava segments and see how I'm doing. So it's interesting that some riders are maybe foregoing that outdoor experience just to focus on the indoor and foregoing that sort of validation, which you can only really ever achieve, I think, by riding outside.
Yeah, and it's not using Strava's average power, is it? You know, they're Strava's own made up version of watts if you haven't got a power meter on as well. That's always a bit crazy. I think, yeah, I mean, this is for me, you know, when you do product testing, it's always a really interesting one because, you know, some people are, you know, I've been guilty of it. You get hung up on how accurate is the turbo trainer's power meter or smart trainer using modern parlance. But you know, if you're riding outside, you shouldn't be using that. You should be using a power meter that's on your bike that you use indoors and outdoors. You know, a crank or a pedal-based one or something like that. You should be using, so you've got that, you know, comparable metrics. So I think there are people who are using. I know they wouldn't be doing, you know, top-end esport racing, Mike, but people are using wheel-on turbo trainers, particularly some of the older ones, and getting the power metrics off that. I think if they started racing outside, they might get a bit of a shock, really.
Yeah, there's certainly a whole range of products out there which you can use, and that is something which I know with the UCI official worlds, all riders are given an identical trainer, aren't they? So, but even then, they're always plus or minus 1% or so. So there's no guarantee that two trainers are exactly alike, as we've discussed before. The measurement of a watt. There's no official watt kept somewhere in a vault. You know, it's not like the meter or the kilogram where it's locked away somewhere and everyone can sort of use that as a definitive benchmark. So there's always going to be that little bit of variability. But the other thing as well, you know, we talk about power as one of the key metrics, weight as well. So are these riders also being supplied with identical scales? I think in my house we've got two scales which do give or take, you know, half a kilo depending on whether they're upstairs on the surface they're on. So that's another little bit of variation that you could, if you were that way inclined, quite quickly and easily use to help manipulate your stats to give you that little bit of an advantage indoors as well.
Yeah, and I thought it was really good. I think it's Swift. They're going to a stadium in Dubai and they're doing a proper esports event again, which would be great, you know, because then you can make sure, you know, you can have the official weigh in. You've got all the kit. You can have all the kit tested. You know, I think that, you know, post this madness that we've all been living through, the new abnormal, let's call it, it'd be great to have those type of events to, you know, to, because we all, you know, we've all heard the stories about people hanging off bars with the filming the feet on the scales and, you know, all that sort of stuff, or putting a tiny piece of carpet under their withing scales and going, I'm using withings, it's got to be the right weight, but, you know, you've got some memory foam underneath them, you know, all that sort of stuff. So once we can get rid of that nonsense, that would be marvelous.
Yeah, I remember listening to the Swiftcast back a few years ago now, and Nathan Guerra, he was suggesting that people will go down to their local post office and use their sort of official scales as a way to weigh in. And it's, yeah, I know with the world indoor rowing, you know, as people know, I've got a bit of a background in rowing as well. When they were held in Boston every year, you know, you'd all go to Boston, and that's where the official World Championships was held, and you'd have an official weigh in there. So, and they'd all be done on the same set of scales. So I think having these championships in the future, whilst it's great that everybody can ride at home, bringing everyone to a central location where you can ensure that people are riding and using the same scales. And even, you know, I had an idea that perhaps everyone has to do a 10k outdoor TT to try and justify, you know, some of their performance. Maybe it's a little hill climb as well that feeds into it as well, so that you know that it's purely about your real world weight, real world power. There is none of this opportunity for manipulation or even just manufacturer error, really. You know, that's another thing that can weigh in. You think you might be completely honest, but actually all these electronics, there's no guarantee, as we often find out with our streams, etc., that it's all going to work. So we've got a couple of comments just coming in as well, so I'm just going to hide you a moment, I think, David, because I've got,
Okay.
yeah, we've got some comments here from Falk. He's sort of agreeing, you know, it's quite tricky outside, it is a little bit scary, even without cars. But yeah, especially with them. And I think from what I read about Egan Bernal, there's a little bit of rider responsibility. He was on the TT bike. I think he was head down and just, yeah, ploughed into the back of this bus, unfortunately. So all the best to him, and hope he recovers, gets back to top form again. And Tam Burns as well in the on messages here. Yeah, everything is open for manipulation, and yeah, problem with championships, the qualifying events, and even just the protocol used for qualifying as well. So yeah, you could easily qualify for an event, and then what happens then when you're at the world event? You end up getting found out. So yeah, it's a bit of a minefield at the moment.
It is, and Tam Burns, of course, we've got to give a shout out to Tam Burns. He did the first ever community world eSports World Championships. So he was the organizer of that, organised it off his back, did jerseys and all sorts. That was I've got to plug here. That was the year after I did the one that Zwift did and come 8th. But I think that was because I was one of the few people that had an internet connection at the end of the sport end of the event. Because those are the days when you put like 1,000 people onto Zwift and the servers couldn't cope. It was all that sort of stuff. But anyway, despite that, yes, Tam did that, and also Virtue Pro. That's why shout out for Virtue Pro. That's why I love it, because you're just racing against bots. So I don't really care if the bots have manipulated the weights or whatever. They're not just bots. They muller me every time, as Tam knows from his data. But it's just a great platform.
We'll get Tam to release all your data so that we can all have a little chuckle at that, shall we?
Well, have you noticed, even if you try and sandbag, which I have on Virtue Pro, you still get mullered by the bots.
Well, talking of bots, we know My Whoosh, they've got their bots riding around, and you can't tell which ones are bots and which ones are humans. But that's a platform that has a huge prize purse for their event. So they've recently just had the Midwinter Solstice series, Midwinter series, can't remember the exact name, but that had a $220,000 prize purse split between men and women's, individuals and teams. The current E-World champion, Jason Osborne, picked up over $15,000. That's not a bad payday for 7 days of racing, is it? That must be pretty comparable to World Tour Road Pro, some of the events that they're doing. And yeah, I'm sure that one of the things that they've been doing is you have to submit dual verification. You have to email it over to race control within 4 hours of the event. But they're looking at having that dual verification within the app itself, which I think would be a real big benefit, because it would allow them straight away to look at those results and see what's happening. But also maybe there's a way where you could maybe average those two power readings and say, well, actually, there is a little bit of variation. Do we take the average? Do we take the lowest one? Or if there's too much of a drift between them, if it gets above 5%, actually, do we say, sorry, but there's not enough reliance on your equipment. So there's a few interesting things that could be coming forward in terms of that in-app dual verification, I think, or dual recording.
Yeah, I never have enough time to do this, Mike. But I keep thinking it'd be great to run a test where you keep running your calibration on you. You could have several power meters, and you keep running your calibration tests until you get 2 power meters that are very close together. I'm not talking about manipulating the data. It's just picking the ones that calibrate closest, because, when I do these tests on turbo trainers, they might, I think I shared some file with you, didn't it? When you, let's say over 30 minutes, they can be within 1% of each other. But over 30 seconds, they can be way out. They can be 15% out, which, obviously is huge. And which one are you going to use as your primary source in an event? And how are the race organisers going to cope with that variability?
Yeah, and also we talk about a pedal-based power meter versus your turbo trainer. There's obviously variances in drivetrain losses, etc. And like you say, maybe it's going to be an event where it's going to be a sprint, so you go for the one with the greater variation over 30, or the higher power over 30 seconds. And if it's more of a TT effort, maybe you go, for the one that's better over 30 minutes. And I'm sure there are people who do look at that and make that decision. Is that right or wrong? I don't know. Maybe you're just using the equipment that you have to the best of its potential. It's yeah, as we say, it's a bit of a minefield. So here's a question: who should be monitoring all of this? We've got a world governing body for cycling, the UCI. They are sanctioning the World Championships. It's an official rainbow jersey. We are allowed to say rainbow jersey. We're not allowed to promote it in any of our own events because it is copyrighted. But that's because of the prestige that it has. And should that world governing body be starting to look at all sorts of championships? We've got these national championships, should the UCI be looking at those and providing some governance on those as well?
I think so. I mean, I definitely think so. And I put ourselves forward for it because we were saying in our chat the other day, it'd be, I'm all for the buffets because I've no doubt that the UCI have a lot of buffets and a lot of good meetings. But no, definitely, I think that would make a lot of sense, and to bring the platforms together to collaborate more. For example, we know there was a very sad instance. Somebody commented on our race team. Why did I think it's sad? And I think it's sad when people go to the all the effort of flipping cheating, really. But when somebody gets banned off one platform, really that they should be banned off all esports platforms. That's how it should be. And I think they need to get a grip of this. And of course, the UCI, just like any regulator, are going to be. I think they're going to be a bit behind on all this stuff, Mike. And they're going to catch up. But I think they need to go on it now and also get some people who fully understand how data can be manipulated and all that sort of stuff. And I know the people are out there. We know people in Zwift who, can spot a dodgy dual power file. All those people who know all the ways and means, I think, should be involved in putting this stuff together. And I think isn't James Derek Vickers from RGT? He's tried to do some stuff with the RGT with the UCI, and I think he's definitely got the right idea there.
Yeah, I think there does need to be some cross-platform governance. Let's talk about Yulia Shalau. I think we were allowed to mention her without risking ourselves of any lawsuits. So she's recently been banned for 6 months from the Swift Racing League. But she was also racing in the RGT Echelon Racing League. So, like you say, could it have been that she just jumped across and carried on racing on that platform? Well, the organisers of that, Eric Hill and Frank Cundiff, decided that a ban on Swift meant that they should ban her on ERL, and also I think on My Wish as well. So there's clearly some sort of cross collaboration, and maybe that's just because those organisers have seen that she was banned on Swift, and so because it's quite high profile, I think. But how many of these riders that might sort of sneak under the radar on one platform, that because they're sort of not in that Swift Racing League, they're not in that top Premier division, they might have been Division 2 or something, and then they just go and ride on another platform and cause issues over there. So I think having some platform, maybe there's a WhatsApp or something where they discuss who's banned on which platforms, because I know RGT are also pretty proactive at asking for verification as well from riders, even though it's a smaller platform. They don't have the resources of Swift, but they do listen to concerns from the community. So I think there needs to be some involvement from the platforms within the governance of racing itself.
Yeah, particularly when you start seeing the money that My Wish are paying out. That's fantastic, and 15 grand is just flipping brilliant. I was just thinking, that if you saw it outside world over the weekend, there was a 120k mountain bike race in Cape Town area of South Africa, and the temperature was 50 degrees Celsius. So, I don't think any amount of money would be enough for that type of event when you can, have your 4 fans on in the garage and in 15 grand.
Well, yeah, temperature control. I know that Chris Frenker from the Zamuna K, he's had a little look at that, and altitude as well. You've got people racing at 2,000 meters, people racing at sea level. You're in your different locations. There's no comparability. No equality of your racing conditions when you're racing online either. So all of that is a factor that plays in, and I think maybe does lend itself to in the future bringing everyone together into a central place where they're all racing in that same environment. It's the same temperature, it's the same altitude, and you take away some of those individual factors that you might use to give yourself a bit of a benefit. Just going to pop to a couple more comments a minute, David.
Okay.
So we've got Bulk as well here saying he trains with the power from his turbo because it's hassle free, but when he races he uses his crank-based power meter because it reacts immediately to what he does. He was also saying a little bit further up, for amateurs, it also comes down to how much you're willing to lie to yourself. This isn't our job after all, and if you consciously cheat, you'll always know, even if no one else finds out. And you can go out on the road and suddenly you find yourself chugging up a hill and out of breath and not even touching the top 1,000 on Strava, but you could be doing that on RGT and absolutely smashing it. We've all got our own conscience, and some people are more willing than others to bend the rules, I guess. And Tam here, he's saying that he's saying sandbagging will become a thing of the past. We can now see when users manipulate height, weight, and FTP. We see FTP in 3 levels: manual entry, race FTP, and an FTP test. Users who continue to enter manual FTP will be removed or even barred from events. And this tool will be given to event organizers. So that's great to hear that that's some tools that are going to be made available to all event organizers. I know that some of the platforms, whilst they probably don't openly, they won't openly reveal all of this, they do have tools in the background where they do look out for big changes in weight, height. That should be locked in really. How much is that really changing? And one of the interesting things with the Julia Shalal case is that when they went back and looked through her data, they could see quite an increase in her performances over a 6-month period. And we've got algorithms, we've got electronics, and we've got the data there. So there's no reason why these platforms can't be using some programming to analyze historic rider data and saying, well, 6 months ago you were riding at 2.5 watts per kilo and now you're up at 6. Well, how have you got so good so quickly? Maybe that's something that we need to investigate. So there's lots of tools that could be employed and put into place to try and limit this impact on everybody, because it's everybody who suffers as a benefit of this, as a result of that.
There you go. Tam Burns has just sent me a private message with my weight history and FTP history on Virtue Pro. That's because I don't update them often enough, Tom. I just want to go riding, but you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. But that comes back to that jet black device. Would it be good? Coming back to your idea, Mike, I've got another one as well. I've just come up with a brilliant idea, which, if I say that'll work, everybody hides behind the desks. But I think if it's to have that way of being able to harvest weight, FTP, all that with very little user having to enter stuff. That's got to be the way forward. God knows how you do it, but that has got to be it. Whether it's through a head unit or a jet black app or something like that, because people must be doing a lot in Apple Health. So does it integrate? I don't know. Does it integrate with Apple Health or whatever? Something like that would definitely be interesting.
Well, I think, like you mentioned, the withing scales. I don't know if it ever's been fixed as a bug on Swift, but that used to sync into Swift, didn't it, with your weight? So
yeah,
a lot of people, a lot of riders, they are very health conscious. They might be using their scales every day, tracking their weight. If that's syncing back to Swift, then you're going to get a very good pattern of weight changes, whereas any big discrepancies then could be easily identified. So more and more data is there to be analysed. People are using it. People are using their apps, and there's more and more ways to input that data, more electronic scale, internet connected scales, shall we say. And yeah, it's certainly, I think, heading in a direction where there will be more and more governance, more and more checking of these. We all at the top level are submitting weight videos, but like you say, it's easy to manipulate those, whereas actually if I'm weighing myself on a scale every day in the lead up to an event, it's time stamped, it's connected to the internet, it's creating an extra barrier, and it's more difficult to manipulate. If I'm doing a weigh-in video, like you say, we can put a bit of foam underneath. It's probably quite easy, but if I've got to go in and look at a data file and work out how to change it and edit a text file, find it somewhere and then resubmit it and try and find a way to make it look, realistic, I'm not going to bother with that, But if there's 15 grand on the line, well, actually, maybe, maybe I will. So,
well, and in fact, my amazing idea. So I was just thinking. So imagine this eSports event, real life, Mike, and you've got, let's say, it's 10 riders, 10 top riders. What they could do based on their place in the bunch or wherever they are, that their turbo trainer could be on rails and push forward. So, but I just thought it wouldn't work on Zwift, would it? Because whoever's first on the screen isn't really first. So what that would probably do, what the Zwift would be able to do, is show us where they are on the server by having somebody pushing them backwards and forwards, like with a brush or something, a bit like curling cross with eSports. And you go, you might think you're first on the screen, mate, but you're last. That type of thing. That would be very entertaining. That would.
Well, that would give them a bit of a kick up the arse, wouldn't it? Oh, you look across, you think you're in the lead, and I'm behind this guy next to me. Yeah. So better get a bit more power down. But yeah, I could see that'd be quite interesting. Yeah, having all these rails and everyone side by side. It's almost a bit like the arcade games where you've got the horse racing going up and down the tracks.
Yeah, I think that'd be quite get rid of their problem where we haven't really got a clue. How do you commentate on a Zwift race, by the way? And such as probably not won. Let's just wait for the official results. Yeah.
Well, even on RGT at the weekend, Brad Sono declared the winner, but he was a little bit too keen, and the winner hadn't quite crossed the line, and he got pipped just in the very last minute. So that was more of a commentator error rather than a platform error. But
that was a Murray Walker.
Yeah, he was like, "Oh, Yaden Yeager's going to win. He's led up the last 500 meters, and he was literally caught in the last 5 meters by the bunch." So yeah, called it a bit too early there, Brad. All right, just a couple more from some comments. So we've got Falk saying he weighs himself every day. If he was asked for verification, he could probably just send in his weight history, and it's also much easier to do than a weigh-in video as well. So yeah, I know that I'm having to get my iPad, get my phone, get everything set up, get up a time and date on the iPad so that I can show that it's today's date and it's a relevant video. Yeah, it's a little bit of a hassle. So if I just got it all automated through my scales, which are uploading every day to the internet, then yeah, that's much easier for me and might encourage more people to do it. And yeah, Tam just saying as well, he's laughing at your suggestion of rails a little bit, and suggesting the race position on Swift is because of the game architecture, because they don't position riders where we do. I assume he's saying I'm assuming he's talking about Virtue Pro there, and we know very much with RGT how it's all server based as well, rather than client side like Swift. How that's going to pan out, and I think this is perhaps why the UCI courses, such as last year, were Watopia Hilly, and this year they're up the New York climb, just to ensure it doesn't finish in a bunch sprint, and we don't have any embarrassing moments like we had with Ben Hill the other week, winning in the Swift Premier League when he was about 15th across the line but declared the winner. So yeah, that was a little bit awkward. We don't want any of that for the UCI, do we, David?
No, not at all. And I was just thinking as well, we'll sort that, Mike, when we're in there, we're getting the buffets. We'll invite Tam along as well. But so with the on the fact of buffets and weighing, I think it's worth mentioning here as well is, obviously people would say just be very careful about how often you weigh yourself, just from a mental health perspective. Probably weekly really is healthier, because we know, I remember, wasn't there still there was a Facebook group, I think, called Zwift Transparency, that set out with obviously the very good intentions.
Yeah.
But I used to see some of the people on there, and it made me cringe because they were probably too light. And I think people got to be mindful that that you're obviously a human being, but you want to live a long, good life, and you shouldn't put your bone density and any other health things at risk through just trying to be very, very light on an esports game. Just remember, you've got a life outside esports as well, but just be honest with your weight.
Yeah, no, that's a really good reminder and sensible approach. So I think we'll just we said we were going to sort of do 20 minutes, and we were coming up to half an hour again. So it's a big topic, big debate. Great that we're having these, and we're going to be trying to do something every fortnight. So if you've got a suggestion for some other topics, then please do drop it in the chat or leave a message afterwards, and we'll look at doing those in upcoming weeks, and hopefully getting some guests on as well. And got Ollie Payne in the chat there saying he's not weighed himself since before Christmas because he doesn't dare find out how much he's gained. So
that's very sensible. Well done, Ollie. I think that is really sensible. But it's a bit like me when we bought new scales, and I nearly sent them back because I thought they were wrong. But that forced an instant diet.
Well, how do you know they weren't wrong? So we just don't know, do we? Really?
No. All
right. So I think we're just going to wrap up. I just want to talk a little bit about the VCN championships that we're hosting. We had this idea, myself and Riley, that they used to be on Swift. They used to have their national championships that were sort of they were official, and I know the British cycling one, you had to be a British cycling member to qualify, and they went on to BT Sport and had their live finals with 10 riders in the studio. But Swift stopped doing those, and they now have the UCI World Championships. And we thought, well, on RGT, there's an opportunity. We can set up our own events, and we can have an unofficial VCN national championships. And the idea is that riders from different countries can come and race against each other, and the winner of each race will be a unofficial national champion. I have to say unofficial or VCN national champion. And it's just a little bit of a badge of honour, against riding against just their own countrymen and or countrywomen, because we're going to have male and female races, and it's just something that they can say that they were for the 2022 RGT or VCN champion on RGT. So there's all sorts of weird wordings around it because of the UCI and eSports, or is it virtual sports? No one's really bottomed any of that out yet either.
When is it, Mike?
So we've got it's in March, so it's about 8 weeks away yet. So we're doing the nationals are going to be on the 20th of March, and then the top 5 from each country will qualify for the World Championships, which will be the week after on the 27th of March. And the idea is that it's just a way for riders to try and earn their stripes. And actually, I'm not allowed to say earn your stripe. That's also a little bit of a contentious area as well because of the rainbow band. So please don't sue us, UCI. We're just doing it for a bit of fun. It's just some guys getting together, having a nice fun race. So
well, can you I'm just thinking about, at the time there's a weird thing that happened on Zwift when people were against Brexit. So I'm not getting into that one, but they put their country down as Antarctica, and they had the Antarctica flag on Zwift. I think there's still a few about. Roberto Massimo Boldi, to name one friend of mine, so he's still on there. So could you, under your rules, as it's not UCI, could I say, for example, that I live in Tuvalu and I race under the Tuvalu flag?
You could do, but once again, it's your conscience that you've got to answer to, David. So how do you feel about that?
No, I was just thinking you could get around the UCI rules potentially by having made up countries that people assign themselves to.
Maybe we'll get people to send a photo of them in with a newspaper from the Tuvalu Times or
yeah, because remember,
Fiji Express.
I live in Barbados, which has its own flag and all sorts, which was a bit of a it wasn't against the UCI, that was for the UCI, but it was a move by some pro cyclists against Great British cycling. So it'd be lovely to have Barbados.
It's not as sunny as Torbados, though, is it? So.
Torbados, no, God, no. And the seagulls are only a cough.
But it does mean, though, as well, that we're having to face all sorts of verification questions. So there's the EBio Passport, which is a cross-platform initiative, and riders can create a profile on there. They can upload a weight verification video. They can upload dual recording analysis. They can link to outdoor Strava rides. And it's an open platform where people can go and have a look, and they can use it to kind of vet other riders, because there's always this onus with esports that you have to prove that you're legit. It's not like the real world where people are trying to catch out. Everyone's kind of assumed these days to be legit, and the UCI are trying to catch dopers. It's the opposite on esports. Everyone almost assumes that you're cheating unless you can prove otherwise. So that's what that website's trying to promote. And this is the first year we're doing it. So we're doing an all male, all female. In future years, we might look at having additional age categories. That's what they're doing with the Canadians and the Americans. They've actually got quite a number of different categories available. But this first year, we're just hoping to generate some interest. We're not going to be diving into all of those specific esports governance, eBio Passport. We're going to try and recommend it, get people familiar with it this first year. We're not sending out prizes. You don't win a jersey, unlike the national championships. Something we can look at in the future, and hopefully this will grow, and there'll be some really good interest this year, and we'll come back next year and it will be even bigger and better. So as an organizer, it's a whole lot of worry about how do we prove that the winner is actually a legitimate winner. But I think we just kind of have to try and do the best we can with the tools that we have and hope that the winners are legit, really.
Mike, I've organised the National 25 RTTC Time Trial Championships in its day, which seems a lot easier than doing an esports championship. So I'll take my hat off to you.
Well, I've got Riley alongside me as well. So we've got the two of us. We've done a few events before. Obviously, we know RGT quite well. So hopefully we can get it to go without a hitch. I'm sure there'll be something we learn this time round. We're trying to not make it too complicated. But we obviously set up the the team time trial on a weekly basis. We've got our hot crit event on a fortnightly basis as well, and yeah, hopefully we can learn from that. And also just looking at other events like the Echelon Racing League, that's a top tier event on RGT, see how they do it. And yeah, I don't think we'll be paying for everyone to all come down to Torbay Leisure Centre to sit on their turbos in the sports hall. That's maybe in 5 years with a nice headline sponsor, we might be able to afford to do that.
You can get somebody to draw you some NFTs, take a photograph of them and send them in as prizes. I mean, because obviously people will treasure a digital picture as a prize money.
Well, I did try to reach out to James Vickers to see if I could get a VCN logoed jersey installed in the app for our world champions, but he's not got back to me on that one yet, surprisingly. So, But you might have seen on the VCN page, we did just reveal the Canadian championships. Their jerseys, they're going to have those in app. So the winners of the 7 age categories in the Canadians, and the winners of each age category will get an in-app jersey that only they can wear for the next 12 months. So if you see one of those on the road, then you're about to get your legs ripped off.
Yeah, they're really smart. I mean, I saw that. They're really smart.
So yeah, they'll be just for those winners. And I think it's going to be the same for the Americans as well. And we'll see what happens with the Danes, the Belgians. So that's 4 big sporting cycling countries getting on board with national championships on RGT. So Tam's suggesting some espresso cups with the VCN logo on it. Yeah, well, we had for the Giro de Europa that we ran back in the start of September, we had some mugs that we gave away as prizes, and we gave those away as random draw prizes because that's something we've done previously, because we didn't necessarily want to have prizes for winners, because does that encourage cheating? That people then so determined to get a prize that they're more likely to cross that line of their conscience. Whereas if you just say, right, it's a random prize draw, everyone's got a chance of winning. Well, if I've got a chance of winning anyway, what's the point of cheating? I'll just ride at my ability levels. So
I know what you could do. You could supply people who are serious racers with a real life VCN training kit, determined by the size that fits them. You could work out what the weight really was.
Yeah, send a photo of them with it, and if it looks too tight, then we'll get you on those scales.
Yeah, that happened with Zwift in the early days. All the race organisers were supplied with Zwift kit, and it came from Castelli. And I understand there was a lot of people that the kit didn't fit, which I thought was hilarious.
Well, again, any sponsors out there you want to get us some kit to send out, then please do get in touch. We'd love to hear from you. Brilliant. Well, that's a good 37 minutes again, Dave. It's been a great chat with you, and thanks to everyone. We've had Damon, Ollie, Tam, Falk all in the chat as well, putting in their comments. So thanks a lot for getting involved, guys. If you missed any of this, then obviously you can go back and watch it because it will be on YouTube. Next time we're going to be talking about, I think we're possibly looking at different devices for gaming on and how that can affect your, I say gaming because riding. I keep saying gaming because you're on your PC or you're on your Apple TV. Exactly. It feels like a game sometimes. But yeah, looking at how that might impact on your experience. And yeah, we're going to be bringing these every 2 weeks. So thanks a lot for joining. Thanks, David. What have you got coming up in the next 2 weeks? Anything we can keep an eye out for coming on your channel?
Speed play pedals. So I got speed pedals. I did that quick video, which was I ought to do it better. I just need to get a quick video up, which was top tips from Dan Bigham on how to be faster in eSports through setting your kit up in the right way, which involved sandbags, but not the sandbags that you might think about, real ones. So I did that. So we've got that. There's a load of stuff actually. I've got a bit of a backlog really. I've got the latest Wahoo cycle computer as well that needs putting out there. And I'm going to do a bit more vlogging stuff as well. But biggest thing I'm going to test is I've revolutionized my running by using barefoot science insoles. I think they will help cycling and they might give a marginal gain, but look out for that one.
Well, I think you need to let Chris Froome know about those, because if you've heard about his knee injuries, apparently that's a result of running. So yeah, that's the latest on that. And you talk about actual sandbags. Maybe Kevin Bouchard-Hall had been talking to Dan Bigham as well. So he's one of the top riders in the Echelon Racing League, and he's qualified for the Swift World Championships. At the weekend, we on the Echelon League, they have webcams in the riders' rooms, and he had some bags of sand or cement on his trainer, and you could see it in his live video as he was riding along. So
Brilliant. He's watched my video. He's definitely watched my video, so that's fantastic.
yeah, we'll put him down as a fan of the show. So nice to see
Yeah.
you, Kevin. Brilliant. All right, well, thanks a lot, Dave, and yeah,
Cheers,
thanks a
Mike.
lot everyone for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed the show, and thanks a lot for commenting. See you all again in a couple of weeks.
Bye, folks.